Maria had spent her life in a small classroom in the Philippines, teaching kids to dream bigger than their surroundings. No one knew about her secret love for singing. When a talent scout spotted her humming quietly during recess, little did she know that one ordinary day could change her life forever, and even leave Simon Cowell speechless. The sun was just beginning to cast a golden glow over the small town in the Philippines, and inside a modest classroom, Maria stood before a group of eager young faces. The walls were faded, the paint peeling in places, and the wooden desks were scarred from years of use. But in this room, the cracks and imperfections seemed to fade away when she smiled. Her eyes sparkled with warmth as she greeted her students, each one greeting her back with shy but trusting smiles. Maria had always loved teaching. For her, it wasn't just about reading, writing, or arithmetic. It was about nurturing dreams, even in a place where resources were scarce and life often felt like a struggle. She believed that a little kindness, a little patience, could spark a lifetime of hope. She guided her students through lessons, making even the most difficult topics feel approachable, sometimes pausing to explain with gestures, stories, or soft humor that made the children giggle. As the morning wore on, Maria noticed a student struggling to spell a word. Instead of frustration, she offered gentle encouragement, kneeling beside him, repeating the words slowly, letting him feel the rhythm of the letters. When he finally got it right, his eyes lit up, and he beamed at her, pride radiating from his small frame. Maria's heart swelled with quiet satisfaction. Moments like this reminded her why she stayed, despite the long hours and modest pay. When the last bell rang, sending children spilling into the sunlit courtyard, Maria lingered in the classroom. The room fell silent, the faint echo of laughter and chatter fading into the afternoon. Alone, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, she began to hum. The melody was soft at first, almost like a whisper, weaving through the dusty classroom air, but it carried a depth, a richness, that seemed far too powerful to belong to someone so ordinary in appearance. It was a song she had loved since she was a child, one that reminded her of her dreams, of all the moments she had dared to hope beyond the boundaries of her small world. Her voice, pure, emotional, alive, danced through the empty room, reaching the corners as if the walls themselves were listening. No one outside that classroom would have guessed that this humble teacher had a voice that could stop hearts. She sang not for recognition or applause, but because it filled her soul. Because it reminded her that even amidst challenges, beauty and joy could flourish. Each note seemed to carry her hopes for her students, her own dreams, and a quiet belief that the world could be a little brighter if kindness and courage were shared. And in that simple, unassuming classroom, Maria's music lingered long after she had stopped. A gentle promise that something extraordinary could bloom in the most ordinary of places. Little did she know, the world outside was about to discover that promise in a way that would leave even the most skeptical hearts in awe. The school hall buzzed with excitement that afternoon. It was the annual cultural showcase, a small celebration where students displayed their talents. From dancing and reciting poetry to painting colorful murals, Maria moved quietly among the bustling crowd, making sure each child felt confident as they prepared to perform. Her smile never wavered, but beneath it, her heart beat faster, not from nerves for herself, but because she wished only the best for her students. Backstage, she noticed a group of parents and visitors gathering near the makeshift stage. One man in particular stood out, sharp suit, polite but attentive, holding a small notebook and camera. He moved through the crowd with a purpose, stopping occasionally to jot something down, observing each act with the careful scrutiny of someone used to finding extraordinary talent. Maria had no idea that this man was a talent scout, visiting from Manila in search of a hidden gem, someone with a voice so rare it could capture the world's attention. As the students performed one by one, Maria hummed softly to herself, a nervous habit she had never broken. When it came time for her class to sing a small group song, she stepped back to let the children shine. They stumbled and fumbled at first, but she offered a reassuring nod and a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've got this," she whispered, her own nerves hidden behind her calm exterior. And then, in a quiet moment between acts, Maria leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. Without thinking, she began to sing a soft, soulful melody that had long lived only in the corners of her heart. It was a song she had sung countless times in the privacy of her room, a song filled with longing, hope, and the kind of raw emotion that made people stop and listen. The talent scout froze. His pen hovered in the air as he turned toward the sound, startled to hear such a powerful, resonant voice coming from a modest, unassuming teacher standing in the shadows. There was no stage, no microphone, no dramatic lighting, just Maria and her voice, soaring effortlessly, filling the small hall with a depth that left the scout breathless. He watched as she swayed slightly, eyes closed, completely lost in the music. Every note told a story of perseverance, of selflessness, of a life devoted to lifting others up while quietly holding on to her own dreams. The scout scribbled furiously, murmuring to himself, "She has to audition, she must be heard." When Maria finished, she opened her eyes, unaware that anyone had been listening. She gave a polite nod to the students, returning her focus to the children's performance, completely oblivious to the fact that a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity had just appeared at her doorstep. Later, the scout approached her gently, introducing himself with a professional yet encouraging tone. "I couldn't help but hear you just now. I think you have a voice that could touch millions. Would you consider auditioning for the X Factor?" Maria's heart raced. The thought seemed impossible, overwhelming. But, as she glanced at the faces of her students, beaming with admiration and trust, a spark ignited inside her. Maybe, just maybe, this was her chance, not just for herself, but for all the lives she could inspire through her gift. That night, Maria sat alone in her small, cozy home, the faint hum of the evening cicadas drifting through the open window. The X Factor audition invitation lay before her on the table, the official letter gleaming under the soft lamplight. She traced the edges of the paper with trembling fingers, her mind a whirlwind of excitement and fear. Could she really do this? Leave the classroom, even for a moment, to step into a world so vast, so unknown? The thought of standing on a stage in front of millions, with cameras, judges, and critics scrutinizing every note, made her heart pound. And yet, the seed of possibility had been planted. She knew the voice that flowed from her soul could reach beyond these four walls, beyond this small town. Maybe even touch the lives of people she had never met. But doubt clawed at her. What if I fail? What if they laugh at me? What if I'm not good enough? The questions swelled, each one heavier than the last. Maria closed her eyes and took a deep breath, remembering her students' faces, their bright eyes, their innocent smiles, their unwavering faith in her. They believed she could do anything, and suddenly, it became clear, she couldn't let fear silence her. Not when so many depended on her example. She pulled out a small box from her drawer, worn from years of use. Inside were little notes, hand-drawn pictures, and thank you cards from students spanning the years. One note in particular caught her eye. "Thank you for teaching me to dream, Ms. Maria. You are our star." Her chest tightened. If her students could dare to dream, could she not dare to follow her own dream, even for one day? Maria spent the next hours practicing quietly, her voice trembling at first, then growing stronger, more confident. She sang not to impress judges or audiences, but to honor the journey that had brought her here. The countless mornings she had spent waking up before dawn to prepare lessons, the afternoons she had soothed a struggling child, the nights she had hummed songs in solitude, dreaming of something more. By the time the sun rose the next day, Maria had made a decision. She would audition, not just for herself, but for every child who had ever been told they were ordinary, every teacher who quietly nurtured dreams without recognition, and every person who had hidden a gift out of fear. When she arrived at the audition venue, she carried more than her voice. She carried courage, love, and the weight of countless tiny hopes placed upon her by those who believed in her. As she stepped onto the stage, hands trembling, she felt a strange calm settle over her. The audience was huge, the judges stern, The lights blinding, but Maria's heart whispered one simple truth. You were born to shine. Sing. With that, she opened her mouth, and her voice, once a secret, now a revelation, flowed into the room, touching everyone in its path. The studio lights dimmed as Maria stepped forward, her shoes clicking softly against the polished stage floor. The massive screen behind her glowed with the words, Maria de la Cruz, Teacher, Philippines. A quiet murmur rippled through the audience. They weren't sure what to expect from a schoolteacher who looked more like she was ready for a parent-teacher conference than a global stage. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, scanning Maria with his usual skeptical curiosity. So, you're a teacher? He asked. Maria nodded, gripping the microphone with both hands. Yes, sir. I teach kids back home. What made you decide to audition today? Simon continued. Maria glanced toward the darkness of the crowd, searching for the right words. Because my students taught me to dream, she said softly. So, I'm here to show them it's okay to try. Something in her voice, gentle, trembling, yet unwavering, earned a few quiet ahs from the audience. Simon's expression softened just a fraction, enough to signal, all right. Let's see what you've got. The music started soft, slow, like a feather drifting through the air. Maria closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with a new kind of fire. And then she sang. The first note carried like a wave across the auditorium, rich, haunting, pure. It wasn't loud for the sake of being loud, nor flashy for attention. It was controlled, emotional, and heartbreakingly sincere. The audience leaned forward, slowly realizing they were witnessing something rare. Simon's eyebrows rose, surprise flickering across his face, as if he had just been struck by electricity. Halfway through the first verse, he turned his head toward the other judges, silently mouthing, wow. As Maria ascended into the chorus, her voice soared not with arrogance, but with truth. Every note seemed to hold a story, of early mornings, chalk-covered hands, silent dreams, and the burning desire to make anyone believe. A woman in the front row reached for a tissue, tears gathering in her eyes. Another audience member stood up without realizing it, mesmerized by the rawness of Maria's tone. Even the backstage crew, usually busy and unfazed, paused to listen. By the final chorus, the room wasn't simply impressed, they were moved. The song ended, not with a dramatic belt, but with a soft whisper, like a prayer landing gently on the audience's hearts. Silence followed just 3 seconds, but it felt like eternity. Then, the entire theater erupted cheers, whistles, applause, that thundered like a tidal wave. Maria blinked in disbelief. Her hands trembled as she covered her face, overwhelmed by the love she had never expected to receive. Simon leaned forward, hands clasped, staring at her with a rare mixture of shock and admiration. Maria, he said, voice steady but warm, I did not expect that. That was world-class. Absolutely world-class. For a teacher from a small town in the Philippines, those words felt like validation, not just for her talent, but for every unspoken dream she had ever buried. On that stage, Maria didn't just perform, she changed the trajectory of her life. And she reminded everyone listening that sometimes, the most extraordinary voices come from the most ordinary places. In the days following her audition, Maria's life shifted in ways she could never have imagined. Clips of her performance spread across the internet like a quiet spark turning into wildfire. Headlines called her the teacher with a golden voice. And in comment sections around the world, strangers wrote things like, she made me cry, and I needed to hear this today. But what mattered most to Maria wasn't the fame or the views, it was the messages from her students. They recorded themselves cheering in the classroom, holding little signs that said, "We love you, Ms. Maria," and "Keep dreaming." Watching their faces full of hope and pride, Maria felt her heart swell with emotion. It wasn't just her dream anymore. It was theirs too. When the time came for the next round of the competition, Maria found herself backstage again, but this time, surrounded by new friends, a shy guitarist, a single mother who danced to provide for her kids, and a nervous young man who sang to honor his late father. Maria listened to their stories, offering encouragement, hugs, and quiet prayers. Fame hadn't changed her. If anything, it made her kinder. "You're going to be incredible," she told them, placing a gentle hand on their shoulders. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried sincerity, the kind that makes even trembling hearts steady. Back home in the Philippines, parents crowded around tiny TV screens in sari-sari stores, neighbors gathered in living rooms, and children sat on dusty classroom floors all waiting to see their teacher again. For a moment, the entire community seemed to breathe in unison. When Maria walked on stage that night, Simon Cowell gave her a knowing smile. He had seen many performers come and go, but something about Maria felt different, more human, more grounded, more necessary. Her performance, once again, left the audience in awe, but it was what she said afterward that truly changed everything. The judges asked how she felt standing in front of millions. Maria paused, gripping the microphone, her voice trembling not from fear, but from gratitude. "I feel grateful," she said, "not because I'm being seen, but because I'm able to show my students that dreams don't have age limits, or status, or borders. A teacher's job is to help others believe in themselves. And sometimes, we forget to believe in ourselves." 2. The audience erupted this time, not in applause for her singing, but in admiration for who she was, weeks later. Whether she won or not mattered far less than what she returned home to. Her students ran to her, wrapping their arms around her waist, chattering all at once about how proud they were. Parents shook her hand, eyes shining with respect. The local government even organized a small parade not for a celebrity, but for a teacher who reminded everyone that greatness doesn't always come from the top. Sometimes it rises quietly from the classroom. And as Maria stood before her students once more, she whispered, "Now it's your turn to dream." She didn't just change her life, she changed theirs.